Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen-only mode.
That would be confusing, at least to me, if I were the person trying to figure out what this plaque in the street was about. And then,
Mary?
of course, yes?
Oh, the one facing the street instead of the Grange, it's awkward because there's parking. So you'd have to get out in the street really to read it if it were facing the Grange, I do believe. That one is right on the outer edge of the sidewalk.
Actually, it's in a, I believe the one at the Grange is, oh, now I don't know where I am. Well, either way, there's plenty of sidewalk in front of the Grange for it to have faced the Grange. In fact, none of these are so close to the edge of the sidewalk that it matters what side you're standing on. I mean, you can stand pretty much on all four sides of pretty much all of them. But as I said, I know we inherited these, so we are dealing with something that we have to be aware of and be useful to us without having 100% control over them.
And
Mary,
number one, go ahead.
Do you wish for me to scroll through these, Mary? I'll just follow your direction. I have.
Okay, I mean,
you're seeing my screen. Are you seeing them now?
Yes, I am. And I should tell you all that I gave the actual photographs to Rich, so he has actual photos close up of all of these too. So this is not. I wanted the board to have a complete inventory of the plaques themselves. So yeah, if you had a question, Linda.
Well, we're on number one. That was the one I thought was misplaced because Pleasant to Spain didn't even live there.
Right.
He was over on Lowell.
Yeah, and it appears that one is, although if you read the text, and these are not big enough for you guys to read the text, but if you read the text of this plaque, it assumes that you will walk down the street to where he did live, but it faces the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's all office.
So I don't know what we can do about this in any way, shape, or form, but I do think it should be something we're aware of. I know for a fact that right now the city is coming through and replacing gutters and sidewalks in my neighborhood, and I know they do it all over the city. It would not be impossible to be aware of that going forward and deal with these little issues. If you would scroll down to the next page, Rich, which is so the a little bit further. So when you're standing at the Grange, you look across the street to the fire station.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the Grange is, I mean, whereas, let's see, if you keep going to the middle of the next page, which is number 8 is the Christmas tree, you look directly across the street at the Christmas tree. So it's, to me, it's disconcerting. The one that really sort of bothers me the most is number 11. If you could keep going, Rich. Number 11 is supposed to be tunnel of color, and it's supposed to reflect the deciduous trees that were planted along Bradburn, which give you this tunnel of green in summer, and of course the tunnel of falling colors. This plaque faces across Bradburn rather than up Bradburn. So it would be very disconcerting to somebody who didn't understand what they were looking for. So as I said, we inherited these, and I think as a committee we have to think about how we want to deal with them going forward, and that also highlights the 5 that have not been placed, and where, if we get to when we get to that point, where those 5 should be placed, and the orientation at such time as that's done. And that's certainly something that can be discussed. It's and I some of the verbiage of these plaques is not easy to understand, and I only say that because I know that within the museum world we try to write so that we're not expecting people to have college degrees to grasp what we're talking about, and we don't want to be too flowery and poetic and confuse them. And so I think if we want to create some kind of document that directs people to go visit these plaques, I think we maybe want to amend, that's not a better, we want to add some more complete verbiage about them so that people aren't lost along the way with what's just written on the sidewalk. So the good thing is at least the ones that have been out there for however many years, Linda said 15, really are in pretty good shape. There's one plaque that I think has had enough weathering that it could use a little bit of work because it's starting to get hard to read because it's worn away so much. But the rest of them actually look pretty good for being out in the Colorado weather for that long. So so that's the inventory of where they are, and they are not all landmarked spots. Some of them are, some of them are not, but they are all part of this original landmark plaque thing. As you can tell from the photos, they're not all placed exactly in the same way in the sidewalk, let alone in the right orientation. So.
And I was going to mention number 21 was one of the last ones placed so far, and that one is set upright, which is an idea to consider where we don't have a sidewalk.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen-only mode.
I think it looks like a rundown archway or something. And so this person had no way to connect if it was historic or whatever. And we were able to guide them to the city's website that explains what the significance of it was and what who the artist was. So we do, there are plenty of people, at least we're getting them at the Historical Society, asking questions about different landmarks. But my suggestion would be, like on that church's stage stop thing, just attach a little, not a plaque, but something that says, go to city website, and give a simple city website for further information, rather than adding too much. I know I, for one, if you put something on the church's stage stop there underneath that explain more, I couldn't read it because I have trifocals and that's way too low for me to read. So if I knew I could get more information from the city, that would help me if I were, a stranger or walking stranger.
Sorry, Karen, you had a point about a walking brochure. I'm not hearing you, Karen.
I forgot to unmute myself. Yes, just a thought building on what Gargi was saying about amplifying the message or explaining it, adding to the explanation a little bit, that would be an obvious idea, to have a walking tour of the landmarks, the landmark plaques, where we could amplify that message and make it available to people who might not necessarily go online or whatever.
Anybody?
And I also ask about whether we could maybe get funding for a brochure, either through State Historical Fund or Certified Local Government grant that we get every year. So just to throw that out there.
Anybody else? I mean, I think the walking brochure, I know the walking brochures that the Historical Society has of Lowell and Bradburn and stuff are useful to people, both for their history and because it encourages them to get out and walk around. So ours get sold for that same reason. But I think it might be, the only thing I would suggest is that if we're going to do that, I think we need to make sure that we include what we've landmarked as well as the plaques, because there's overlap in them. And it wouldn't be that, we're not talking about adding 50 more. We're probably talking maybe a dozen properties that don't have a plaque that are in that same vicinity, in fact. But yeah, I think that would be a neat idea. And it's not likely to go out of date real quickly, because these things are set in concrete, and as are the historically landmarked properties we've done. So, but, well, and as I said, the second item is, what we do about the ones we have that remain. I know that the Lucky Day Ranch one is somewhere in the area of where the development that's going on in Upland is going to be. So it's too early probably to place that one, but that is the rough location of where that should be. And obviously the Savory Farm one, we know where Savory Farm is, and we have landmarked the tower. The park is an open space, but the tower is also landmarked. So that's, and obviously Linda would know best about placing the one at the college building. Linda?
The mute thing. We have a sidewalk that goes right from the front entrance south that goes to the road there, and people are walking around on that road all the time. So that's a natural place for it.
So that leaves the Harris, and I don't know about the depot. I don't know. I mean, I know where the depot was. I don't know where the best place for the plaque would be necessarily. We don't obviously want to put it someplace that's so low traffic that nobody sees it. But
on that one, I would suggest, if we're a reference point, put it at the new depot with referencing to visit the historic downtown area. Because you're not going to find a place to put that plaque that people actually really walk, you know, where the depot was. But anyway, it would be nice to, you know, have a jump off point when people get off the train and say the original depot was located at, or what, something like that. Like they did for that number 1, the Despain one. That's nowhere near Despain.
There's nowhere near Despain.
Yeah. But,
and then,
you know, yeah.
And then the last one, changing views based on its text, is supposed to be near the Gregory House or on Gregory Hill. And that one is another problematic one in terms of sidewalk and things. I suppose it could be north of the house at Gregory Hill and looking back toward the house, as opposed to on that very steep incline that's right in front of Greg. I don't know how many of you know where Gregory House is, but yeah. It's going up Lowell past 80th. It's right at the crest of the hill, right before you get to the Bellevue University. And so the sidewalk there would be, if there is even sidewalk, would be problematic, but it could be placed beyond the house at Gregory Hill.
Well, there I am.
So, and that I was going to say, Linda would know more about that, whether that area is going to be, how much of that area is going to be affected in the new development.
I'm kind of in touch with the developers and a big promoter of the, I'm seeing everybody all of a sudden. I'm a big promoter of the viewing park that's supposed to be at the crest of Lowell. And I am sure they're not going to make it into a park where there's amenities there, except for perhaps parking the car and watching the view, which a lot of people do. They take pictures up there. And I would presume there's going to be a sidewalk up there. So that might be an interesting place, because the whole point of that park is the view. It's the most unobstructed view we have in the city, that you can look out and not see houses. And that's why they're talking about not developing that whole top part of Lowell at the hill. And that would just be a natural one there.
Well, and according to this, the text references the house, but it also references both the view as it was and how the view today is dramatically different. So that actually, that would go really well. So yeah, there is the infrastructure for us to eventually place the rest of those plaques. The two in Uptown are going to take a little longer, obviously, but the other three should be reasonably easy to get placed. So
yeah, and I'll make that note, because the viewing park, they don't call it that per se, but that's what I'm calling it.
Okay,
so.
I'm glad to know about that. I know there was talk of it. You had talked about it, but I wasn't sure if it was part of the final development plan. So
I am very, very sure it will. That's kind of a trade-off point. You know, that will keep an unobstructed open area for the whole public.
Oh. And with respect to the new business A, number 3, awareness campaign, if we could come to the ability to do a walking brochure, that would be, I think it would be a good awareness for all of these things. We have to make sure that we integrate the city-owned historic landmarks and the plaques, but I think that would make for, it would be a really great thing to say, well, have you walked to Westminster? Well, here's a little brochure that you can walk and see. And most of the plaques are south of 36. Not all of the properties, some of the properties are not, and obviously the church plaque is not. But we might be able to end up with sort of 2 loci of places to visit, with Schoenberg Farms way out there in the west. That's the only one that doesn't conform too well.
Well, and the
So-
other one that is a landmark is the Semper Farm, which is way out in my neck of the
Yes.
woods. And Vicki Bunsen set up a brochure covered thing there on the steps to the house. I was keeping it full of the brochures for a while, but that's kind of fallen by the wayside. But that's was specific for the Semper Farm and all the verbiage and signage there.
Great.
Not to take us down a little rabbit hole, but the more I'm hearing this, I really like this idea that Karen and Mary, you guys have put forward of this walking tour. Because frankly, yes, there are a lot of people, and I stand corrected. Linda said that they get a lot more inquiries. My experience has been that many more people would be interested if they happened upon it, if it's easier access, because a lot of people who live in Westminster just don't even know about some of the historic pieces. It's not that they would necessarily go looking for a lot of history. They may not be as interested, but it's kind of interesting to them. So somehow with a lower capital outlay, if you will, or low expense, how we can make these walking tour potential brochures easily accessible rather than say come to the city to get them and we'll tell you where it is. I just kind of am thinking, you know, what a great idea, because I'm walking by and I'm getting out. I've been isolated at home and I suddenly come across this brochure and I go, oh, how fun. Why don't we do this? And maybe a couple of friends just do that. It's a little hike, it's a little walk. There's so much benefit to it. Keeping it simple, not spending too much money, but I don't know that I have. It's just kind of, I'm thinking aloud, guys, that as you guys are talking about all of these pieces, hey, this is a great idea, especially in these times, because nobody has money, but they want to get out.
Karen?
In the interest of truth in advertising, I think the brochure probably should be walking/driving tour, because we do have several of our really important sites that aren't within walking distance of each other. And then another thought was, if and when we get around to creating such a brochure, having a stash of them in the arts district businesses, because that there are some plaques right there, and if people might be interested in knowing if there are others and where they are and so forth, and to have them in those businesses would serve a dual purpose, it would seem.
And I would like to have them so I could just hand them to people. Here, go walk around. So, Sarah?
I was just going to say that it reminds me of when you go to like a national park or something like that. And as soon as you go up to the trailhead, there's, you know, like a plastic folder that has a map. It might be a more cost-effective thing to have, like if we wanted extra information about that landmark, to have something like that.
Tennille?
Or even if we could do the little QR thing and people could scan it with their phone and then pull it up through the Westminster website. Or it could be also, the brochure could be on the website, so it's something people could print off on their own to do the walk as well. Yeah, just depending on how technical people are or how much they want to do. And maybe that could be kind of joined with any health initiatives or, you know, things that happen through the rec center.
Karen, did I see your hand? Yeah. We're not hearing you.
I had to turn myself on. Just so I'll put in a plug for covering all the different technological bases for folks who maybe don't do QR codes. I have a friend who, she has a smartphone and such, but her eyesight is failing, so she can't really read, you know, the data. So good old paper copies, I know we're cutting down trees, but still that's a venue, an avenue that a lot of people, I think, not just me, still enjoy having.
But if we had the verbiage and we had the brochure, then the QR codes are easy, because
Sure.
all we have to do is have the QR code go back to that particular. So it's getting the data together. But yeah, I agree with across as many platforms as is feasible. It makes a lot of sense. So did I see Sarah's hand?
Yeah, I was just gonna say exactly what you said. Like if you have like a few, paper copies, then the QR code could be on there. When I go for walks, I try to not have my phone with me because I'm staring at a computer all day, so it's kind of a way to disconnect. But it'd be good if we could cover all the bases there. I like it.
So I guess one of the things we need to do then at this point is to start with, if we're going to go this way, we need a definitive list of the plaques and addresses, which I think we have, and then we need a definitive list of our landmark things, and we need to start working on integrating those two and looking at the loci of maybe it's one brochure, but it's like you can walk historic Westminster, or then you can do driving to some of these further flung places. So I think maybe that's the first thing we have to do. Does that make sense? Rich, you there?
I am there.
Does this resonate with the city? That's what I want to make sure. We can get all excited. That's why I said I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole, because I'm very capable of doing that. But I do want to, more. So biggest bang for the buck. If this is something that seems like, hey, we are going to get some real good traction, not going to spend money, maybe a good way to move forward. But Rich, your input would be good at this point.
Yeah, my role was as staff liaison, and I support this clearly. I think this is something that would fall to the board, frankly. I think that you would need to, in my opinion, the most effective way of getting this done, an efficient way of doing it, is maybe to have maybe a subcommittee that works on this so that they can bring it back to the full group. And I know that somebody, and I can't remember if it was Sarah or I thought it was one of our newer members, but somebody had volunteered some graphic design skills. Does that ring a bell to anybody?
Probably me. I've got marketing and a little bit of design.
So yes, Tania?
We also have this from, do you remember the tour that we did?
Yes.
2 years ago? Wherever this original document is, somewhere, this is a great foundation to start. So we've already got the history and the photos there. So if this original document is somewhere, I think we start with this and then add the work that Mary's done with this list, and we're most of the way there at that point. And
the area that I can provide most direct support, of course, would be to make sure that that's represented on the website the way we wish to represent it on the website, so you have another place to drive that traffic. But I would leave that gathering and wordsmithing so that it's to your satisfaction. I would recommend that a subcommittee work on that and bring it back to the group for discussion. And then we can talk about fabrication and how we plan to distribute them to the various locations, if they're going to be at businesses, how we're going to facilitate those drops, etc. But absolutely, I'm happy to support that.
Margie?
Couple of quick questions. If these are walking tours, we probably want to get some nice maps, simple graphics like you have on those NPF, the park services. When you walk in there, as you were mentioning, you pick them up so you know exactly what they are. Just simple. They don't have to be very complicated, but that would be something we may want from Rich's help on, because just to be able to get something, and then there are no copyright issues in what you're printing out there. The second part of it would be, obviously, there'll be some next steps in terms of once simple ideas put forth. There'll be some minimal expense, but there's also some expense for printing the brochures, making sure they're appropriate for the city, and then putting them somewhere. So that might require some city council approval. I don't know, because I'm not sure that we can just go ahead and we're going to place them here, kind of a thing, rather than making it official. I would prefer to make it official, because that then has a lot more weight for the city. That's all.
Mm-hmm. My screen keeps going off, so I can't raise a hand. I was going to say, backing up, I already have a doc that I have worked on that coordinates the landmark sites with historic sites. So, because that was a good reference point to actually state the importance of different sites in the city as we talked about them. I will go back to the brochure idea, which, like Sarah said, we have at the Semper Farm that the city placed. It's maintaining that brochure system, because you have people that just come take them and rip them apart or whatever, or the plexiglass boxes are pretty watertight, but it is the maintenance part of it. And so that is an extra expense that you might not want to, unless you have people at each site to make sure that the brochures are being refilled and everything's taken care of so it doesn't look ratty.
Karen.
Well, that's why having the brochures at the History Museum, at the MAC, inside the 73rd Avenue businesses, then we would not have that problem of outdoor maintenance and theft and stuff.
So, go ahead, Sarah.
I just had one more question. I'm kind of thinking about this from a marketing perspective, but is the goal of the awareness campaign to drive, to get local visitors aware of the historic landmarks, or is it to also bring in, new people to visit the area? Or is it both?
I would think it's both. I think primarily we want to make sure we start with the locals, because as most of us find out, we run into people who don't know any of these spots. But I certainly think that it will eventually need to grow to the point where we're, trying to get people to come over from Arvada and North Glen, and Federal Heights has a historic society in Denver. And I don't know that we're going to become, nationally famous for our historic walking tour, but I'd be okay with that. Karen?
Well, that's where the city's website comes in. If, as part of their marketing, if they can say, we have these sites and we have these plaques and we have these local landmarks and we have brochures about them at these different locations. Yeah, so, or we have a QR code. I don't know. I'm not a techie, but if there's a QR code on the website or whatever to help people, all the methods that we can use.
Sarah?
Just one last thing. This has got the gears turning in my head, but one way we could I was just thinking, why would someone want to do this? What would be the trigger to get them to actually explore? It'd be interesting to do a scavenger hunt or something and say, can you find all 20, how many are there?
So
21 landmarks or something like that.
It probably ends up being about 35 when you incorporate all of them. It's interesting that this came up because in 2019, I ride my bike a lot in what is also the Broomfield Open Space and Metzger Farm. They did a booklet that entire summer that was visit all these places. Some of them were exercise, some of them were history, some of them were culture. And the idea was that you on your own wrote down when you were there. And of course you could hashtag it and put it on Twitter too. And at the end of the summer, they gave away a minimal prize for people who completed their booklet. And it's funny because I had hoped we could do that as well, but last year, of course, none of this could happen. But yeah, it would be nice if there was some way, but I think it's going to take us enough time that maybe we get to the point where we're able to do something like that, around, into next year. It's going to take a while to get all the stuff together and all that stuff. So that being said, who's interested in serving on the subcommittee? Anybody else?
I can help.
Sarah, do you think that 3 of you together is
I'll help.
I didn't hear the last help. Was that Alana? Well, I mean, if the 3 of you are interested in sort of spearheading this and that would be great. And if you could report back at the next meeting as to where we might be. I'm not expecting there to be, finished product, but give us an idea of where you are. That would be great.
And the goal would be to update, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. The goal would be to update the existing kind of story for each plaque, maybe like add additional information, or if there's anything we'd want to add to the story of the plaque, we would include that in a document or something like that.
And I think if once you get the information that we have from the plaques, you will see that it's so short that there's almost all of them have a little more story that could be added to them, without haranguing people with 5,000 words. And yeah, the idea being, can we get the coordinated list of the plaques and things we've landmarked together in such a way that they're to the point where we can begin to create like mapped areas. Like these are all in the historic Westminster district. These are all, in other places. Does that make sense to the committee?
Yeah, I love that.
Rich?
So just to let Ilana, Sarah, and Linda know, I will also forward you that driving tour information that we had pulled together for the tour we did 2 summers ago, because I think this is bigger than just those plaques. I think it's just a matter of taking all of the information we have and then synthesizing it into what this new brochure is going to look like.
And the only thing I would add to that, Rich, is of course we've added the Presbyterian Church since that time. So we will need to make sure that they are reflected.
Absolutely. And I think that's a starting point that will then eventually lead to how we add this to the website, because it obviously needs to work in concert with it.
Sounds great. Karen?
Seems like in talking about people maybe not only walking, but riding or biking to the sites and such, and incorporating this larger scavenger hunt idea, it would make sense to have these brochures at the various Westminster rec centers. Yeah,
and City Hall and all of those kind of places, I think. But yeah, I think that's a great. I love it. So.
One other thing along this line, in the original city videos of the depot area, they had included the idea of doing a replica of the original depot and setting it there and using it as kind of an information booth for handing out things like brochures and things like this. That's still in my mindset there too. The only problem is they didn't want to have to install restrooms in there or maintain any of that. It could just be like a storefront sort of idea. But if you look at it as you take the drive along the, I think it would be the north side of the tracks, you'll see the depot place there. So I don't think that's ever disappeared from the idea. It would be, and the depot itself was not very big. So, but architecturally, it was really, really sweet.
Well, and to that end, Linda, were you talk to the college about placing the plaque, the college plaque, as well, so that we can have an address for that, hopefully by the time we have the brochure?
Okay. I will do that.
It's
3455 West 83rd Avenue. That's just the address, but that's for the whole locality. But as far as that one particular spot, you can't miss it. There's a big headlight that shines up on the castle from the south, and it's the only sidewalk that comes off the road. And
Okay.
since it's a private road, but that road is actually advertised as a good place for people to walk. It's a safe place for people to walk. So people are walking there all the time. And I will often stop and say, do you know anything about this castle? And anyway.
So did I see your hand, Gargi?
Couple of comments. One, I know Elena, Sarah, and Linda are working on it. For myself, I can speak to it, and the rest of the committee or the board, that any help needed, obviously, we are more than happy to. This is not meant to be assigning tasks so that everybody else, we don't want to help or do anything. I also think it's great that Linda is on, because she's the one with the most historic knowledge of all of this. So that will be really useful. And Sarah, I know you said that you're graphic input. I just wanted to make those comments so that it's understood that yes, we are here to help. I'm happy to help, and I'm sure I'm speaking for Tamil, Karen, and Mary when I say it's not that we are saying we won't, but it's faster to move if you have like one person making those decisions, right? That's all. And maybe at the next meeting, one thought I have is, while these ideas are great, maybe once we have a outline of something, we can start to talk about next steps and timing it. So when do we do it? Because otherwise all these great ideas disappear. They never come to fruition. And that would be very, very good to have, because it's something fun, it's something great, and it's something fresh that we'll do. We are not inheriting anything, we're creating it, right? So I get excited about that. So just wanted to make those comments, and thank you, everyone.
So,
Maybe as a long-term goal would be Historic Preservation Month, which would be in May of 2022, to give us ample time to assemble all of this and hash everything out and create it and fund it, whatever.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And if we're okay with that, I was going to move on to new business B, because there's a little bit of a dovetail here, which is, I went out, when I got done with the plaques, I went and looked at the signage at the various landmarked spots that the city owns. And they range from the kind of signage that was at the Church Ranch, which is that sort of brown open space. Doesn't mention it's landmarked, but there's a sign for the space. There's one for that. There's one at the Savory Mushrooms. There are also places, there's also one at the Church Ranch Barn. There are also places where there's no signage. There is no signage that I can find at the Marion Barn. I could not, I did not find a single kind of signage at Schoenberg Farms. And I know Schoenberg Farms is still a little bit of work in progress. But I want to make sure that when I drove up to try to see if there was any signage at the Marion Barn, I wasn't exactly sure where to go. I ended up, driving into the parking lot and walking over and looking. But there's no signage there, and I could not see any signage down on 120th that would have shown you looking up at the barn rather than parking. So as part of this project, partly, I think we need to be, think the city needs to be made aware of the fact that there are some of our landmarks that don't even have a sign on them. They don't even say they're landmarked. The Church Ranch Barn has a sign for the open space. It doesn't say it's landmarked. It doesn't say anything about it. But if we do this project with that, we will then, if we end up with QR codes, if you walk by any of those places and it said historic landmark and there was a QR code, you would then get something about that. And for my purposes, that's what I really want. It's people not to wander away not knowing. if, as I said, these kind of dovetail together a little bit for me. But I don't like the fact that the board has gone to the trouble to listen to public comment, to be in charge of these properties when things have to be done to them, and yet they sit there in anonymity. And so that's one of the things that I hope this project can help with that too. So, Gargi?
So are you thinking, and I'm again doing the thinking out aloud part here. Okay. I do a lot of that. So are you thinking when we do this, get started with this and try to come up with a brochure? We start with, the first step is the signs are missing. We are not talking about major investments. We don't even want to know when we can do that, if we can ever do that. So we start with listing all the landmark properties. So we start to actually gather them into the brochure. So eventually what we are hoping as a first step is the brochure is going to list all of them. When they get on the website with the QR codes, that's one part of it. But basically what we are saying is we're creating that blueprint, if you will, with this brochure, which gives you a little bit of the history. It tells you how you can do driving tours or walking tours. And basically it's one place where we are listing all the landmark properties. Correct? Okay. I think that's what we are thinking.
Also, the way I have my documents set up, it's in a spreadsheet. So there's a standard, where you have a location, note if there's a picture, note the date that it came about, and so you have a whole spreadsheet of commonality of headings that you can work from, which shows you where the gaps are, what we're missing, what information we're missing.
Well, and I don't go far enough back with this board to go back to the beginning. So I know I'm bringing my own sort of baggage of historic landmark with me, but without signage, without notification to the citizens, we are invisible and the things we're doing are invisible. And that disturbs me, because when it comes to somebody else thinking they have something that needs to be landmarked, they haven't even run into the ones we've previously landmarked. And that, as I said, other than knowing the Marion barn and the church barn had been landmarked, there's not a thing there to make people even know what they are. And I must say there's a part of me that's concerned about the church barn in particular because of what happened to the barn that was up on Huron. That hadn't been landmarked but was old, and then suddenly found itself in a fire because people around it, and so that's why there are some places that we've landmarked that are not in the middle of people, and they don't, I want I want us to be cautious of them, I guess. So, Alana? Oh. Okay.
I can tell you, Mary, that my experience has given me some horror stories to recount about historically landmarked facilities, which tend to have changes done to them. Been in that business long enough to tell you, out of the woodwork, after things have happened, people come up, well, isn't this a landmarked building? Well, where is the documentation? Who knows about it? People have gone ahead and done things to it, which completely changes and impacts the significance value. And sometimes that has happened not just to locally landmark facilities, but buildings, but also sometimes at the state level. And those are not fun things to deal with.
So, well, as I said, because the city maintains those signs and we are an arm of the city, I just think as we go forward, signs get replaced. I would like those signs to at least reflect that those spots have been landmarked. In my opinion, if we're an arm of the city and the signage department is an arm of the city, those two things go together. We're not asking for new money, new signage. We're just asking the city to not forget us when they put a new sign up on something we've landmarked. So, And I'm not 100% sure how we do that, Rich, but...
Well, we start with awareness, and those properties are maintained in most cases by our open space division. So that's obviously a conversation I need to have with them, forwarding the things that have been brought up today, so they have that general awareness. I think the other thing to do is to determine what those brand standards are, because we don't want 20 different signs that all look and don't refer to each other. So I think, again, in terms of practicality and efficiency, I think we target one of them that we would kind of work through designing a sign, and that becomes the standard that applies to all signs afterwards, and then you move forward from there. But that seems like a logical first step in my mind. And whether we choose that as one of the sites that happens to be most frequent and that doesn't have a sign, or if you think the one that's most desperate that needs a sign, we can start at either end of that. But that seems to be the logical path forward from my perspective, and I just present that to the board for your consideration.
Karen?
Well, that makes me think about the local landmark that is literally right across the street from me at Schoenberg Farm, and all of the foot traffic and car traffic and so forth that happens at the businesses there. It's like, that's a logical place to have a bunch of brochures and QR signs or whatever in the businesses, to raise awareness to all the people that come through there and see those brick buildings and wonder what that's all about. Maybe they would if they knew that they were significant because they had a sign on them.
Well, and I know that this summer we are going to have an event at Schoenberg Farm, and I don't believe Schoenberg Farm has a city sign on it in any way at the moment.
Only the fading SHF signs, which may not mean too much to very many people.
So, I mean, I wonder if that is a place to start, Rich.
Well, I can guarantee you that the several hundred people that are going to go through it in June are going to have an all new appreciation for Schoenberg Farm, because we are actually going to bring that history to life in a way that no sign could possibly bring it to life. Of course, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to have a sign up by the time of the show, which begins in June, but it's entirely possible that we could have, and I will advocate for with the production company, maybe including that history on the program that everybody takes away with them. If not, we could certainly try to have something as a takeaway. That wouldn't be impossible.
And Gargi, you had a point about planned replacement?
Yeah. As Rich was talking, what I was thinking, Rich, is the question I have is when you're saying which one do we target? Does the city, does the open space program have a signage replacement cycle or plan? Because sometimes they do. And if that's there, then we can probably look at which one are they planning to replace first? Because it's easier to do that without additional expense, right?
Right. I'm going to apologize. I'm not aware that they do have a schedule that they go by. I think it's typically replaced as they need maintenance or repair or replacement.
Okay.
Well, good. I'm, as I said, I think with respect to Schoenberg not having a sign, it should be on the list. And so maybe that's one, since we're starting with a blank slate with the city in many ways on that. So if that's okay. So,
yeah, and of course, I do have to point out that this is also an incumbent upon finding a funding stream for this, whether that's from a grant or if I can't speak for open space and what is or isn't in their budget. I know that we don't have a historic preservation budget that we can just draw from. So I just have to make that caveat.
Karen?
A wild thought, is it the Westminster Foundation that was involved with funding the Centennial book? And I know they're involved with, I can't remember if I've got the right name or title for it exactly, but whether they might be a source of help.
That's the Westminster Legacy Foundation, and it's possible. They've actually done some restructuring lately. The goal of that organization is to connect people with unmet needs, and that's kind of very nebulous. So they aligned along three pillars, if you will. One of them happens to be arts and culture, which is where this might fit. The others are nature and wellness. I don't know the third one. And I apologize, it's a long day. But that's a possibility, although they tend to set those goals for the projects that they are adopting well in advance. So it may take a little bit of time to get into that cycle where they would be able to add another project to their already long list of what they're trying to tackle. But they do it very much project-based. They focus on very specific projects that align with those three pillars.
Okay. Well, that's great. And I can't remember what future meeting formats was supposed to be about, Rich. Electronic meetings. Oh, that's what it was. So in this age of electronics where we have these these meetings, but they do not necessarily have to be open to the public because we are not taking comment. One of the thoughts that Rich and I wanted to throw out there was that it might be that in the future, an online meeting could be a placeholder for an in-person meeting if we have very minimal business to do. And
yes. To be clear, all of our meetings are open to the public. We don't always have public comment unless there's a public hearing, and that's only in the case of a certificate of historical appropriateness or designating a new landmark. But just to be clear, all of our meetings are open to the public.
But it was just a thought that we wanted everyone to have out there. It's a thought I wanted to have out there for other people to comment on, as opposed to not having any kind of a meeting, which we can also do if we need to. Obviously, I think for our next meeting, we have things to talk about, so it's not going to be the case there, but it's just a possibility in the future. I'm not really thrilled with the idea that we meet like this all the time, but it could be a time saver going forward. So if anyone else has any thoughts about that, I'm open to them. Karen?
Yes, that makes sense. If we knew, we have to have at least 4 meetings a quarter or a year. So if we only had need for a very short business meeting updating the status of the landmarks and so forth, then it would make perfect sense to do it in this way, even though, and then we wouldn't have to meet physically in person.
That's exactly what that item is on the agenda, is to say that we have those requirements to meet 4 times a year, but in those instances where there really is very, very little business, if everybody would be willing to substitute an online version, and then just reserve those in-person meetings for the big business. That is exactly what it was. Thanks for bringing that up, Karen.
So
that's okay. The new normal, right? So some good things have come out of a pandemic. Not everything is negative. That is the new normal for work environments as well across the globe. They're exploring all those options.
Great. Rich, with respect to updates on historic properties, consideration of old business?
Yeah, our running list, and we provide that with every agenda. I'll always attach it, but as a reminder, additions or changes are always noted in red, and we don't have any changes now, and I don't know in the foreseeable future if there'll be changes until we get through this kind of budgetary belt tightening. So nothing has been updated, but it is provided for your reference.
And respect to consideration of old business nomination rationale, this came directly out of me and the Marion Barn. I know what the Marion Barn is about, but when you arrive on the board and you inherit the historic properties that we maintain, that we take care of, as well as the ones that are owned by other people, if you don't know if you aren't Linda Graybill and you know everything about the history of Westminster, it can be daunting to wonder why we've historically landmarked certain things. And so when I was talking to Rich, my thought was maybe we need an ongoing document almost for the committee, for the board itself, that lists this property was landmarked in this time, and it was landmarked for these major reasons. We don't need the entire report that was produced, but that I think I had a little bit of help because I'd been at the History Center, but even I ran into properties where I was like, why did we landmark this? What does it mean? Especially with some of the houses that are not owned by the city, but that we have landmarked. Tennille?
Yeah, I agree with that because there are also some caveats. Like when we were looking at the rodeo market and the restaurant, and it's only certain aspects of that building that have the historical designation. So, that we're concerned about the barrel vault roof and some of those things. So that piece too, that was like, it's interesting. It's a little more complicated. So that would have been really helpful information. Yeah.
Karen?
Yes, a little brief sentence summary of this place is significant because for these reasons. And it harkens back to some of the things I was reviewing from my notes from the Saving Places conference, where they talked about an example of a really humble looking residence in Fort Collins. And it happens to be where Hattie McDaniel lived, the actress in Gone with the Wind, who played Mammy. So, it was significant for other reasons besides that, but nobody would know looking at that building why it was significant.
And to Tennille's point, what is significant on these structures is not always the whole building. So I think that's why the rationale behind what we've done and what is our responsibility to keep safe, I think it would help all of us individually if when we came on, there was a document like that said, here's what they all are, here's why they're significant, and here's what we're responsible for keeping safe going forward. I saw another hand.
I might suggest that if we do a good enough job with the brochure, a lot of that context would be provided for each of these properties. Now, keep in mind that anytime there are any proposed changes to those properties, and thus a certificate of historical appropriateness needs to be applied, we would certainly provide all of that background information to the board commissioners, all the archival history, so that you would be able to make an educated decision about that property.
The part that I really kind of hone in on in this cheat sheet portion is exactly what Tennille brought up when we were looking at the rodeo marketplace, because not every portion of the structure is significant. So we should not be overstepping our purview and our authority at any given point. And that's pretty critical for members of the board. If we get run over by a truck and somebody else is replacing us, to have handy rather than I think it's a pretty good point that all of you folks are raising, because it comes up time and again. Just the facade, not the interior. It's of interest, but we cannot tell you what to do about it. That kind of stuff. We don't have to slap our hands then, Rich, and say, you can't go there.
Rich? Are we just responding to?
Yes, I'm just giving a good finger wag.
Well, and to me, it's a form of institutional memory that has been missing from this group, I think. And it's the last thing anybody ever does whenever they have any kind of organization like this, but it is important. So yeah, if we could work on that, I think you're right. We can maybe grab some of it out of what we do, but I don't think we're going to necessarily tell the public that we only care about the barrel roof and the facade, in the sense that, but yeah, I think it would have been helpful for me, and I think it would be helpful going forward. And I'm more concerned almost about that than the past. So I think that gets us to.
I'm waving my hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. If I missed somebody.
Yeah. The important thing about these historically landmark places is that they are placeholders for the history that's behind them, even though it's a physical representation of what the history is. And not much of it may be left, like the Church Ranch Stagecoach Stop. Even the wood is down at the Mandalay Church School building down there. And but we're trying to highlight visual representation that will key in someone wanting to find out more about it. And so, yeah, some of them don't have much of it left, but they're still important.
Yeah. Karen?
Reminds me of, again, something that resonated over and over at our Saving Places conference was that it's not just the physical remains, it's the stories of the places and the people in general, not famous people, but the people, the culture, the neighbors associated with the place that are part of its importance too. So it's kind of like the site is the jumping off place for the history.
Yep. Okay. Then I guess we are to other business, conferences, education, and other updates. Karen?
I'm only halfway through my notes from the Saving Places conference, but it is always such fun to go back over things, and then I have to go online and Google left, right, up and down to find some good item to connect it to, whether it's about the particular building that got listed as an endangered place or the person or the book that a speaker referenced or whatever. So it always takes me more time than I think it will, but eventually it will all be there. I sent the first half to Rich today, so it's out there. And it was great, just so inspiring because there was such an emphasis. It was called Preservation in Action, but my fellow attendee knows there was so much emphasis on diversity and bringing in all sorts of people who have been here in Colorado.
That's great. Is there anything else in that agenda item, Rich, or are we on to just the remaining schedule?
Does anybody?
I just wanted to take a second and.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to jump off what Karen said and said the entire thing was an incredible experience. I feel very lucky to have attended it, and that it was an incredible introduction to somebody who's new in Colorado to the people and the concerns and the community and the action that's being taken on Saving Places. And so it was just an unbelievably neat thing to be able to do. And there's a whole section of it that had to do with technology and immersive new technology that they are kind of using to tell the story around the place that you're in, which could possibly be of interest to us at some point. I know that they're doing some free trials of it, and they do it on your phone. You're able to kind of stand in the space and it overlays the old photo with where you're standing, and kind of introduces that story in an incredibly immersive experience. And it was very visceral to kind of see what they were doing. So anyway, thank you all for the opportunity.
That's great.
How many of you follow the Certified Local Government training calendar? Because I know it was a great website that was created that has all of the free trainings over the course of the year. I'm happy to send that link out tomorrow. I will actually plan to do so, just so you have it. But that is an excellent resource, and it's probably too much for me to share on this meeting. So please look for that email tomorrow, and I will shoot it off to you so you can follow what you might wish to attend over the year. And Karen, did you want me to send your notes to the group now or wait until you had your full set? Because I know you do like to share those and we love to see them.
It's whatever you want to do. If you want to send the first half, it's complete by itself. And also the other email I sent you, which came from CPI, and Alana, you may have received this too, about how they're going to be rebroadcasting some of the most popular sessions, because since it was all virtual, attendees could view it after the fact. And now they're apparently opening it up for non-attendees for a nominal fee, I have no idea what, to be able to attend the most popular ones. And I don't know, they don't specify. The first one's tomorrow, I think, if I remember right. And I don't know how often they're going to do them or whatever, but they might be of interest to people, especially they're apparently doing them at a certain time. So whether or not that works into everybody's schedule is another matter. But anyway, just to know that that's out there now, that with another result of our COVID-19 is having access through this format.
Couple of other things. I do wanted to remind everybody, we talked about it very briefly, but Land of Milk and Honey is the name of the performance that we will be debuting at Schoenberg Farms, that runs 5 nights a week in the month of June. If any of you wish to attend one of those performances, can you please shoot me an email so I can make sure we get that taken care of, because I do anticipate these selling very quickly. This group is phenomenal. They have incredibly moving performances, and they're very, very popular. And we sold out in record time last summer with our collaboration at the golf course, and we kept adding dates, and as soon as we had them, they were gone. So if you have interest in experiencing the history in that setting, please let me know right away so that I can reserve those for you. I would be happy to do so.
When is it in June? Do you know?
It's every, I want to say Tuesday, Wednesday, was it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? It's 5 nights a week, and I'm not really sure. The tickets haven't gone on sale yet. But if you go to the City of Westminster's website and look up special events, so cityofwestminster.us/special events, you'll see all of our listings there, and that's where the ticket link will be. But there are going to be 2 performances a night for 5 nights of the week. I think they're off Monday and Tuesday, so it would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I would love to hold those tickets if you'd like to come. Certainly, this is the board that deserves to experience this. So shoot me an email so I can have a record, and I will take care of that, and I'll work with you to find a date and a time that works for your schedule. Don't forget, shoot me an email. And I also would like to recognize a council liaison. Lindsay Smith is listening in tonight. I don't know if she would like to say hello. I might attempt to briefly unmute her, and if she doesn't say anything, we'll know that she's just listening. I hate to put her on the spot, but I love to recognize that she sits in and listens to these. She's a tremendous advocate for arts and culture, and we're really happy to have her supporting this group. So Lindsay, Councillor Smith, if you're there and would like to say hello, feel free.
Hi all, it's Lindsay Smith. Just as Rich said, I'm listening in, and it's nice to see all of your passions towards this, and I really appreciate it. As Rich said, I do have a soft spot in my heart for arts and culture. I was the art and transit places for RTD. So I have a good background and history on art projects. So I appreciate the passion and all of the efforts that you put forward for not only our community, but for being a liaison to council as well.
Thank you so much, Councillor Smith. And
right.
I don't have anything else, Mary.
Well, I mean, and the other thing on here is just the remaining meetings for the year. So unless there's somebody else who has something else that they want to add, I want to thank everybody. I think we got a lot of great discussion tonight, and I feel like there's the germ of an idea here, which makes me feel really great. I hope you all feel good about it too. And if that's the case, then I will say we adjourn as of 8:26.
So they have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We need a first. I can't do it.
I move that we adjourn.
Then I'll second it again.
Okay, then I move, yes, we adjourn at 8:26. We made it just under the wire. So.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
See you
Bye.
all. Bye. Okay, where is my...